Hey guys, so I'm here with Mr. Guns and Gear. He decided to come to the lovely state of Texas and enjoy our cold afternoon here. But tell me what we've got behind us, what's going on here.
Sure, so we got the Primary Arms Range Day. It happens every year, at least for the last few years, right before the NRA convention. So the NRA convention starts tomorrow, and a lot of the vendors that want to show off their new stuff bring it here. Like a lot of the products we've been using today are brand new. Today's the first day the public actually sees them.
You want to come to a convention for the NRA, you get to shoot stuff beforehand.
Correct. And this event is open to the public. So they have a media portion and then a public portion as well. We're here at the public portion, so. So this is actually my first time firing the 6mm Max. Very interesting cartridge that Sons of Liberty and a couple other companies have put it forward. The velocity of this is insane. Basically 55 grain up to over 100 grain bullets. And out of a 10.5, what's the velocity of?
Out of a 10.5 to 55 grain, you're getting 3,200 feet per second.
3,200 feet per second out of a 10.5. That's insane. So let's see. Yeah, and it feels, the recoil is basically the same. That's crazy. Get it up.
Nothing like being on a range when it's pouring down rain the entire day, even though the weather service told us that it wasn't going to be like this. Yeah, I wasn't kidding about the lightning strike. It was pretty close.
I looked at the forecast like 3 days ago and said nothing about this.
Nothing at all. There's still people out here shooting because you can be dry for a second while you shoot. It's fantastic. So what was this? A Primary Arms Range Day. This is ahead of the NRA conference here in Dallas. So they do this every year. They have a 3-day conference. And then before that, you get to come out and try out the newest, latest, and greatest stuff. And you got to make sure that you're listening to Mr. Guns and Gear. Make sure you follow him on your social. What's your social for everybody?
At Mr. Guns and Gear. So Twitter, Telegram, Truth,
yeah.
At Mr. Guns and Gear.
Make sure you follow him there. But this was a lot of fun. We got to shoot a lot of really, really fun rifles, guns, all this stuff. I don't know the right terminology. All I know is most of the time he screws with me with safety, and by screws with me, a safety exists. And I just forget to actually do anything with it, but that's okay. All my guns don't have safeties, so I'll never have to worry about that. That's the only bar that I have.
That's a good rule of thumb.
Subscribe to his channel, enter his promo code, Mr. Guns and Gear, right, for Mug Club.
Absolutely.
Make sure you show this guy some love. Thank you very much, man. I appreciate it.
Would it surprise you for me to say I think Donald Trump after today is going to win in a landslide?
I don't think it'll be a landslide, but I don't feel good about this one.
I've been doing this series for a while here, but every now and then there's a fundamental shift that doesn't go unnoticed. Picture the stereotypical Republican voter. Now picture the stereotypical Democrat voter. Do those stereotypes still hold true?
Things are tanking, interest rates are up. Can't even buy a house these days.
Right.
The economy's horrible. You know what I mean? I made more money this year than I ever have in my life, but I'm broke.
And that things just cost too much?
Oh, yeah.
The homeless population have really increased. I did not vote for Donald Trump, but I do believe, now this is just my belief,
that's fine,
that he's a bulldog that can pull some things together for the economy.
The economy's doing great. You know, unemployment is down every month, and you know, why change?
If the economy is doing well, there can only be this messaging for so long of no, what you're living isn't what's actually going on. Because it's been pretty valuable today just talking with people saying, you know, and I don't feel heard. There seems to be a real disconnect.
Very big disconnect.
Do you have hope that it'll get better?
Yeah, I think it will.
When you actually get out, the picture becomes even more clear. What do the country's voters look like today, and why? This is Talking with People. straight to the point. Joining us here now at the program, we're very happy to have him, is a man who has served his country, Patriot General Michael Flynn. Let me see what these books are here really quickly. This is the Citizen's Guide to Fifth Generation Warfare. Oh, there's two different versions. One is an introduction to 5GW.
5GW, Introduction to Fifth Generation Warfare, and the second is How to Fight Artificial Intelligence.
Oh, okay.
I think you guys would be, you'll be better off if you read them.
I hope so. I think
they're great. There's actually a third session that we just published about myself and Sergeant Retired Boone Cutler, who's a Special Forces PSYOPs guy. The third version is the role of the church in this country. So it's a big deal.
It is Flynn, Deliver the Truth, Whatever the Cost. I have a screener here, but unfortunately, because it's not 2006, I don't have a DVD player. And there's a digital version. Okay. So this film, when is the film?
So right now, it's out right now. It's out as of the 30th of April. It is #1 on Amazon for DVDs right now for about 7 weeks running. What's fascinating in the movie, and I'm just going to tease it because there's a really important part of the movie where we talk about pardons. It's what I received was what's called a pardon of innocence, because my case, and 95% or 99% of your audience probably doesn't even realize that my case was actually dismissed 8 months prior to receiving the pardon that I had to get. And the pardon is called pardon of innocence. And I'm the only person in the history of the United States to ever receive one of those. And the reason why is because my case was dismissed. So when your case is dismissed, I pulled my guilty plea. I fought the system, beat the system. Case was dismissed for egregious government misconduct. Then the judge grabbed hold of me, which is totally out of character for our judicial system and the judiciary, for 8 more months.
Yeah. And
we knew that had Trump lost the election, which he ended up losing, and Biden won it. Now, we can argue about that because I'm in that camp. But because of what happened, we knew that this judge was not going to let go, and more than likely, and my wife had a lot to do with this. More than likely, the Justice Department would have figured out a way to bring me back in.
Right.
So the film is out there to, like it says, the subtitle, Deliver the Truth, Whatever the Cost. Whether you want to, believe me or not, I absolutely firmly believe in what I say and what I know and the direction that the country's taking, and the persecution, the persecution of me. I was sort of target #1.
Right.
And we know from the evidence that we were able to pull out of the Justice Department, out of the Department of Justice, out of the FBI, was that the whole effort was get Flynn to get Trump. You had to first get Flynn out.
Right.
And that meeting that they decided that on was 5 January 2017 in the Oval Office. Barack Obama led that meeting. Wow. It's in the Durham report. It's in the evidence that we exposed. And in that meeting was Uncle Joe, Director Comey, Director Brennan, Director Clapper, National Security Advisor Rice, Attorney General, I think she was acting at the time, Sally Yates. And there was a couple of other minions. From that meeting, we know that's 5 January 2017. That's the meeting that the day that the coup began. I ran one of the largest intel agencies in the world.
Right.
I was also in a position at the national intelligence level, where I was the assistant director of national intelligence in a very important role, both times appointed by Obama.
Right.
So Obama appointed me twice. The Senate confirmed me twice. And what's fascinating is, and we talk about this in the film a little bit, did they bring me into these positions because they knew that I was sort of an enemy or not? Bring your enemies closer kind of thing.
Right.
Maybe it was a case of that, but I don't want to think that way, because I'm just generally not that way. I'm one of these guys and I talk about in the movie about politics a little bit, but this is really not a political movie. This is an inspiring story of survival. Because I have 9 brothers and sisters, eight living, 4 brothers and 3 sisters that are still living, and that family, our family had to come together. What I want people to ask themselves when they see this movie is, what are they willing to fight for? Most Americans don't realize how much communism has infiltrated inside of the United States, the institutions of government.
Right.
I mean, in a huge way. So particularly in the intel community. So one of the things going in, I really felt like this was an opportunity to serve the country again. I had a great relationship with Trump. It got the one element in the movie that I think is surprising to many is it wasn't just Obama. It wasn't just, the left. It wasn't just that, sort of the Democrats. There are elements inside of the White House around President Trump. And for President Trump and any of his, any of the folks that will watch this show, which I know a lot of them will, they need to understand even now the people that are around him and who do they trust. Everybody says, the next presidential election is the most important presidential election we're ever going to have.
I think this one is.
This one is the most consequential historically. The real plan was 8 years of Barack Obama, 8 years of Hillary Clinton, and Louder with Crowder wouldn't be around.
No.
Okay? We moved from an era of physical assassinations to what I call assassination by narrative. Mm-hmm. And so if they own all of these different, sort of the corporatocracy of the U.S., and that corporatocracy is a variety of things. It's the media, it's Hollywood, it's the intelligence communities, it's people in the government itself.
Sure.
It's in the institutions of particularly like the higher education. So they work together in a very collusive way. And so if they say this guy is a threat, so yep. Mike Flynn is a threat, we cannot have Mike Flynn in there as the National Security Advisor, because the National Security Advisor is close personal advisor to the president on a daily basis, involved in making critical decisions every day, and is actually over the top of all these other institutions of our government. It's definitely the intelligence community, the Department of Defense, Department of State, Department of Justice, the FBI. The National Security Advisor is in that kind of a position. So now what they do, if they don't like somebody, and they're doing this to Trump right now, and one of the other threads is the people that went after me, they're the same people that are going after Trump right now. Mm-hmm. They are the exact same people. Some of them are still in government. Others are out of government, and they're working in these various law firms that are out there that are plugging these things in. This whole J6 thing is utter madness. Right. I mean, yeah. you got Clay Higgins of Louisiana, Congressman Clay Higgins of Louisiana. He's already exposed that there's been over 200 FBI agents. Epoch Times, which is another outfit that I do think highly of because they stay focused. Yeah. They broke a story about a month ago where 50 agents were there on J6. The only way that you can put that many people on the ground on that day is to have planning ahead of time. And I mean long-term planning, like at least 30 days, mm-hmm. maybe even more. So if they knew within a 30-day period that they were going to do that, why did it all happen? Why did it transpire the way it did, right? I mean, why did it happen the way it did? And to me, this is the thread that I want to pull. So God help them if I ever go back into government. It's not because they're incompetent. So I want people in this country to realize that these are people that are not doing things out of stupidity or incompetence. They're doing things out of intentionality. This is very intentional. And it is to change the culture of the United States of America from a culture of really unity and freedom and democracy as part of a constitutional republic to a socialist state. Yeah. And we are going, if we don't get this right, this most consequential in the history of this country, this coming up election, if we don't get this right, then we're going to become the United Socialist States of America.
What to do is write a bunch of jokes in the morning, and on a good day, you write about a dozen solid jokes. Everything goes according to plan. You got yourself about half a dozen sketches ready to go, ready to upload at a moment's notice.
Done, Drill Sergeant. Jumanji Jake! Why did you assemble that Watchtower rifle so quickly, Jumanji Jake? Because you told me to, Drill Sergeant. Jiminy Crickets, that is a new Mug Club record, Jumanji Jake. I would have you promoted to executive producer if it wouldn't be such a waste of a damn fine graphics man. You are going to be a CEO one day, dadgummit Jumanji Jake. Disassemble and continue.
Anyways, jokes are the fruit of the show. You got Biden jokes, political jokes, gay jokes, jokes about sex, no knock-knock jokes because those are never funny. You got sketches, parodies, sponsor ads.
Man, this Watchtower is a great rifle. Made in America.
Done. Dadgummit Jake!
Go to watchtowerfirearms.com/Crowder and enter promo code MUGCLUB to get $100 off a Mug Club rifle purchase, 10% off accessories, and free shipping. Watchtower, American made, Mug Club approved.
What's going on, Mug Club? I'm Paul Johnson. Recently, I had the awesome opportunity to run 3,000 miles across the United States from Los Angeles to New York City. And this wasn't just about running. It was about raising awareness for mental health. The other part of this run was fundraising $1 million for Team Red, White, and Blue. If you're not familiar with Team Red, White, and Blue, they're the nation's leading health and wellness charity for veterans, over 200,000 members nationwide. Team Red, White, and Blue hits the nail on the head, providing training, programs, guidance, events to get prior service members up and moving and focused on that physical health so that we can also tackle our mental health as well. The whole reason that I got into running was I started training for a marathon with one of my best friends who was in the Marine Corps. And prior to that, I was really struggling a lot with my mental health, and the main coping mechanism for that, as I think a lot of people can relate to, is alcohol. And as I started running, I found myself drinking a lot less, and the more and more that I ran, I realized that it became my strongest coping mechanism. And most importantly, I learned just how important physical and mental health is. And you know, this goal of promoting mental health and making people aware and trying not to be afraid to talk about it really did shed a light on just how important it is seeing all these communities come out and entire towns coming out on the sidewalks like a parade to cheer us on as we're running through. A lot of people think that the run is done and over with, and it is, but our goal of raising awareness for mental health and trying to fundraise $1 million for Team Red, White, and Blue has not ended. At the time that we finished the run on April 21st, we had raised just about $500,000. Right now, we're just shy of $600,000, and our fundraising efforts continue as we try to approach that $1 million goal. If you're able to support in any way, we would love to have you help donate to the cause. You can head on over to our website, www.pauljohnson.run, and you can see all the information there about donations, Team Red, White, and Blue, the run itself. Appreciate you watching, appreciate you taking the time. Thank you all for your incredible support.
Join Mug Club today and fight like hell at louderwithcrowder.com/mugclub. Use the promo code MILITARY for $10 off an annual membership all month long, and 10% of all the proceeds this month will be donated to military charities.
Josh.
Yes. Hello.
Was he? I mean, and General Flynn's right here. I just haven't.
Yeah.
You probably shouldn't have told me that.
Talk about him like he's not here.
Was there somebody that hurt you, Josh, earlier before the show? No.
Every day, it's the man in the mirror. He's a jerk.
I think that's funny. He's giving you a little bit of a hard
I thought
time,
the clip of you in the commercial where you were promoting like some kind of
my Patriot Supply. Yeah,
My Patriot Supply. Great. It's great. Those are people really need to be paying attention to things like that right now. But when I saw you talking about, because I was asking about your type of comedy, and then I heard you speak in that commercial, I was like, oh, okay, now I get it.
Yeah.
I understand a lot more about it.
You sound like my dad.
Right. Yeah. I had a quick question for you, General, as we're waiting on.
Where should I look anyway? I know.
Yeah, you're fine to look into the camera. I mean, I'm over here over your left shoulder, but don't worry about it. Okay. I know it's weird. So, you've dedicated your life.
I've had so many people behind my back that I have not wanted behind my back.
Well, don't worry. I don't have a knife.
You don't want him either
in the back or anything like that. But no, so you talked about your family, and service is something that is very important to you, to your family. You've dedicated your life to doing it. And you may have talked about this before, but this is the one thing that sticks out to me. You've done that. You've sacrificed. You love your country. How did it feel when it appeared that country that you've loved and served and dedicated your life to attacked you?
Yeah. It's funny, but for my entire life, so I actually lived I was born on a military base. I lived over in Germany when my father was stationed over there. So I lived over there as a kid and watched him, would travel around. He was a great athlete, and he was also, a instructor at an NCO, at a sergeant's academy, basically. And so I always looked at the Army. I mean, as far back as I can even recall as a kid, that's what I was going to go do, was to go and serve. And so I initially thought I was going to enlist in the Marine Corps. I actually did go through the enlistment, but then I was offered a scholarship because I could play basketball pretty good.
Similar thing for me.
Crazy.
Signing bonus.
And and so, the guy, so anyways, long story short, I ended up in the Army, and then I served. Never, ever thought that I was going to be rising to the, levels that I rose to, and I did. So I get there and I retire, and I talk about it in the movie about part of why I retired, and it's just truth to power, right? And working in the Obama administration, but essentially refusing to testify in front of Congress to the narrative. Right. The narrative that the Obama administration wanted about the whole idea about, we're winning the war against ISIS, right? Remember, bin Laden's dead, Al-Qaeda's on the run. Remember that phrase? Yep. And so it was just the opposite. So then all of a sudden I get out. So I'm out in 2014, so 10 years ago, right? 10 years ago, almost this September. And I come back to the United States, and then I start getting asked to advise different candidates who are running for president. And of course, Trump was the guy that I ended up really having the best relationship with. And I find out that the worst enemy that I'm going to face is right here in the United States of America. I mean, the worst enemy.
Can I ask you, because you said this a couple of times, I'm just curious, why do you think you had the best relationship with Donald Trump in comparison to other people like Barack Obama? Like, why do you think you connected in the way that you did?
Number one, and I mentioned this in the movie too, the movie's fascinating. I never met Barack Obama.
Really?
Never met him. And he appoints, that's breaking news. It's the first podcast I've ever talked about on that.
I'm going to adjust this a little bit.
So,
I don't want anyone to miss it.
Yeah.
You guys let me know if...
Is that okay?
Can you say that again? Yeah. What?
So I was appointed by Barack Obama twice.
Yes.
For two really, really critical positions.
Yeah.
Okay? In the government. One was to be one of the highest levels in our government and in the intelligence community, Assistant Director of National Intelligence, and the subtitles Partner Engagement. The second job was the Director of Defense Intelligence Agency, which is one of the largest intel agencies in the world. So Barack Obama appoints me to those. And then, fast forward, I leave on generally a sour note from DIA and retired from the Army. And, and the guy that dismissed me because I didn't toe the narrative was Barack Obama, and I never met Barack Obama.
You never met him?
Never met him.
I had a chance to meet him and totally blew it.
Why? You were drunk?
Well, yeah.
Again?
Yeah, it's not a problem. It's just coincidence.
It's at one time,
We had a 4-day weekend promised to us.
You had a chance to meet him?
Yeah, we had a 4-day weekend promised to us, and so Thursday we're lining up in formation, ready to go home. And First Sergeant comes down and goes, hey, by the way, President Obama's campaigning. He wants some soldiers standing behind him here on base, and he's picked our company. And so we had to go stand behind Barack Obama and meet him afterwards. And we had all made plans with our platoon sergeant. I was a sergeant at the time, fire team leader, and my platoon sergeant planned this whole weekend of having fun because his wife's out of town. We're going to go to his house and drink and have fun. And so we're all disappointed. And he goes, don't worry, boys. We'll still have fun tonight. We'll go easy. We'll get up at 6. It'll be fine. Next thing I know, it's Friday, and it's like 9 or 10 a.m. And he comes down the stairs butt naked. He's like, boys, we missed the president. I was like, oh, no.
First I thought he said Barack Obama came down, but...
That's what I thought.
Don't get all wee-weed up.
I was like, what? Barack Obama came
down? God made me. Is that why...
So for Trump...
is that why he told Trump, and I have this here, I just have some quotes to make sure I'm not that Barack Obama told Donald Trump to worry about two people, Vladimir Putin and you.
No.
And you.
Very precise. It wasn't Vladimir Putin. It was Kim Jong-un of North Korea. So he gave Trump advice during their transition, right? I mean, this is transitioning the entirety of the United States of America, okay, from one president to the incoming president. And he mentions two people. One was Kim Jong-un, the famous dictator, rocket man from North Korea, and General Mike Flynn.
I have an article that says Putin, but at that point you're splitting hairs.
Tell me who the article's written by, and I'll tell you, not to read it again.
Okay, all right. So it was Kim Jong-un.
So you can't make that up. Yeah. So you cannot make that story up. And he tells Trump not to hire me. Okay, and I'm giving you a little bit more in the movie here. Because I talk about this very specific piece in the movie.
And don't worry, by the way, about spoilers. People will go see your film to support you. If you talk about things that are in the movie, they're not going to be like, wow, he ruined it.
Yeah, what I talk about is the conversation after that meeting between Trump and Obama. I talk about that conversation that I had with Trump. So afterwards, Trump and I had a conversation about that discourse between Obama and Trump, which was.
What was his tone like? Was he like, "You're never gonna believe this shit"?
Oh, who, Trump?
Yeah, was that what he was saying?
It was exactly.
And I would imagine the worst thing you could do to President Trump is tell him who to not hire. He's like,
especially,
"Oh, really? You're hired, right?"
Especially with a guy like me who had been traveling with him for like daily for months, right?
So you had already been traveling with President Trump by the time Barack Obama said this.
I mean, Trump. Again, in June of 2016, I was one of the 4 final candidates for Vice President of the United States of America.
Right.
Okay. The other 3 were, Mike Pence, obviously, Newt Gingrich, and Chris Christie. Okay, and then the 4th person.
So you were really number 2 on that.
This is June.
The point is nobody's perfect. Trump screwed up.
This is June of 2016, and then Mike Flynn, right, is the 4th person. And I talk about the conversation I had with Trump when he called me up to say, "I'm not going with you. I'm going to go with Mike Pence." It's actually a pretty funny conversation. But then fast forward to this same thing about Obama telling Trump all this. Trump and I we spoke right after that meeting between he and Obama, and he was just exactly kind of like what, not quite verbatim, but
indignant, I would imagine. He's not going to be told what to do by Barack Obama.
Right.
The moment Barack Obama made fun of Trump at that correspondence dinner, I felt like
that was it.
He logged that and he said, okay, all right.
That was it. He didn't trust him. I can tell you for a fact he didn't trust him. The challenge is when you come in. This is all. I always say mission over ego.
Right.
In any organization that I was ever in, get rid of your egos, put your ego out the door. Mission. What's our mission? And I think Trump came into once he won, he comes into the presidency, and he's like, okay, we got a mission. We're going to make this country better again, right? We're gonna strengthen all the different things that Trump talked about: manufacturing, economy, energy. Safety, security, the border, all these things, right? And I think he felt like the government, like a businessman would, when you take over a business, everybody around you is going to say, "Okay, we're with you, boss."
You row in the same direction.
Not in government.
No.
Not in government. And I
especially when there's so many CIA members.
Specifically, toward the end of the movie, I talk a little bit about this, not about Trump not having. Now he does. But at that time, he didn't have an appreciation for just how government operates. Mm-hmm. I tell somebody, I'm the head of a giant organization. I go in and I say, okay, we're going to move to the left or we're going to move to the right.
Right.
What the bureaucracy does is they come back to you with like thick things like this, like white papers, and about how they can't do it, and they're looking for bonuses, and they want more people.
Right.
I mean, it's nuts.
Well, a perfect example is Fauci and, for example, Dr. Birx, where in my mindset, I think Donald Trump thought, okay, I'm going to put, the old wrestling term, I'm going to put Fauci over during this pandemic, and then he's going to look out for this administration and do what's best for the country. He didn't understand that if he puts him over, this guy may turn that authority on you and makes it about himself. I think he thought we're trying to help the country during a period where there are a lot of unknowns, and trusted it. And boy, did that turn out poorly.
So I wrote this on one of my X posts that people that listen, they can go to @JenFlynn, it's my X tag. And they, after the International Criminal Court of The Hague, put an international warrant out for Bibi Netanyahu. I said they misspelled Bibi and they should have spelled it Fauci, because Fauci committed a massive crime against humanity.
Yes.
Okay. There's no question. It's undeniable.
Also
Beagle. And so, the whole Operation Warp Speed, okay, that was put into place really, and led by Mike Pence, okay, with these people like Birx and Fauci, who are two, and there are others. But what you have to understand is that that COVID and the whole COVID debacle, it wasn't like, oh, I got the flu and we got this problem. This was very intentional, and it was designed way back. It was designed well before Trump even got into office. So if people, this is not a conspiracy theory.
No, of course not.
This is that actually is real, and they were very intentional, and they were very thoughtful, and it's how you shut down. It wasn't just shutting down America. It was shutting down the world. So they could then shift it to this sort of what I call it, this globalist alliance, right?
Yeah.
And that really does exist. And what we're going to see as we go forward here these next couple of months for the people on the Mug Club here that are watching, you're going to see a shift in the economic conditions of the world, okay, to a digital currency. And you're going to see at the end of this month, actually, is when the World Health Organization is going to basically declare that they're now in charge of all health decisions for the world. The United States of America, this Uncle Joe, he hasn't signed it yet. We just had 49, all the Republican senators just sent a letter to the White House saying, please don't sign this. I mean, I don't know how many people on your show even know that. They just did this like a month ago, because the end of this month is when this thing sort of takes effect.
Right.
And when it does, then our health decisions as part of this globalist alliance are now going to be made by something called the World Health Organization, which is run by a massive Marxist. I mean, the guy that's in charge of the World Health Organization was put there by the Chinese Communist Party, and he's a Marxist.
They don't even acknowledge that Taiwan exists. Have you seen that video, right, of the man being interviewed?
Xi the other day said Taiwan is part of China and will become part of China soon.
Right.
I mean, he said it the other day.
Yes.
So it's like I used to say on the battlefield, as a guy who thought about our enemies and studied our enemies and fought our enemies, I would sit there and I would study them, and I would look at what they're doing, and we either through interrogations, or we would capture documents, or we would read their doctrine. I would go, Jesus, if they're telling us this, and then you see their behavior on the battlefield, you better pay attention, because this is probably what they're going to do. So they're telling us this. They are telegraphing exactly what they're going to do, and now they're doing it.
Yeah.
And we're in a place now historically in the United States of America. I don't even know if you want to go down this rabbit hole, but
I'll go down any rabbit hole.
We're in this place right now where they have sort of decided, well, we can't go back. So they can't keep taking over the institutions of colleges and universities. They can't keep taking over. In fact, they've already got them.
Right.
I mean, media, the government, a lot of elements inside the government, a lot of the banking systems, and there's other sort of the corporate world, right?
Well, the biggest one is not just legacy media, but big tech. And when you look at the WHO, you look at the CDC. I mean, I don't know if you know this. We were suspended here on this show first off, we were suspended at the last election. We had the biggest election stream of all time. Had 17 million people watch.
Wow.
In 2020. And at the midterms, they banned us within 2 weeks of the election.
Yep.
And I don't know if that's because we had Carrie Lake on, who questioned election results, but we were also banned because we talked about how there have been more deaths from the flu for toddlers and infants than all of COVID combined just in one season. And we used the CDC as a source. Big tech said, the problem is the CDC says if you cite that, even though it's their numbers, people may not take COVID seriously enough, so we were suspended, and we weren't able to stream the next election. So this came directly from the administration. That's the biggest one, because 90% of the information that travels is controlled really by about 5 companies.
Exactly. So, indicator, right? In the Army, and these are sad statistics, but here I am going to talk about prostates. Okay.
Please do. I have many questions.
My prostate, as a guy who's 65 years old, my prostate, I should have problems. I don't, thank God.
Really?
I take good care of myself. But in the Army today, in the last couple of years, 20-year-olds and 30-year-olds, the prostate rate has gone up 600%. Okay.
You mean the prostate cancer rate or the prostate?
Prostate cancer, prostate problems, right? And the cancer rate. Where in 20-year-olds and 30-year-olds who are serving in the military are generally the healthiest part of our society, anyways. And it's always been literally less than 2%. It's flat, almost a flat line. In the last couple of years, because of the vaccine program, So when I looked at that, and this is all public information. So when I looked at this defense medical data, I'm looking at this and I'm saying, Jesus, that's terrible. I mean, that alone is one of those indicators where you say, okay, if somebody got the vaccine out there, that's your business, And and it's nobody's business whether I did or not.
Right.
But the point is when you're forced to do something that you say, that you go, this is just not right. There's something not right about this, and I really don't want to do this. Well, in the Army, you kind of, I mean, people, I've been called a vax denier. I've been called an election denier. I don't deny vaxes, and I don't deny elections. In vaccines, I was a pincushion in the Army. Anybody that served in the military, they know. I mean, I've had, more shots. But when we start to look at what the COVID vaccines were, and this gets back to...
It's not even a vaccine. I call it the mRNA injection.
Right,
just to because, like you're saying, you probably don't have a problem with a vaccine for polio or measles.
No. I have all those.
Right, exactly. The mRNA injection, it's different. It's not even a traditional vaccine.
So one of the things that I do think that and I don't know where it polls. I don't watch polls too much on this account, but I do think that there's a lot of people that feel like, okay, under the Trump administration, because you mentioned Fauci and Birx. We didn't know these people because of the Biden or the Obama administration. We knew these people because of the Trump administration.
Mm-hmm.
And so the Trump administration allowed, they began this. Now, Trump has come out a couple of times and restated his position on where, he didn't do mandates. He said alternative medicines are fine, ivermectin, hydrochloroquine, all those kinds of things. So I think he's stated it, but there's still a lot of people that were injured. And there's a lot of people that are sitting there going, I have 5 friends of mine that died. Yeah. And they had, you could say, well, they had existing conditions. They weren't that bad, you know, but they took the vaccine and within a year they were dead. Right. So, I mean, I look at this and I say, Jesus. So part of my message here to your audience is don't take this dang vaccine because it is an injection of something.
Yeah.
But if you want to do it, it's up to you. So, and in my own family, in a large family, my wife's large family, we have this debate all the time because people do this. Let's talk about elections because this is about making decisions in a free country.
Right.
Okay. That's really what this comes down to. Your ability to be able to have this great show and to be able to speak your mind freely, which you do, and you have a great dialogue with your team here. I mean, that doesn't exist in any other country on the planet. I mean, you might be able to get away with it in Argentina now because, Milei has gone fuera to everything. I love it. Yeah, I love it. We're going to do a skit on that. We should have done it here.
Oh,
we actually have
we can write one up right now and before you leave.
Do it. And I just start ripping off the fuera. But Milei, maybe that'll open up there. There's a couple of other places where there's some ability to be able to speak somewhat freely, but not really.
They don't have it enshrined in the Constitution.
Don't.
I was raised in Canada. Okay. And he's the worst, Trudeau. I always say the two most, and I would love to get your opinion on this, the most dangerous people in politics, because to me, it's not Hillary Clinton, it's not Nancy Pelosi. Obviously, Trudeau is the worst. He actually gets a thrill out of abuse of authority.
Yeah.
And in the United States, the scariest proposition to me is Governor Gretchen Whitmer of Michigan.
Yeah.
If that woman is in a position of power, she will make Kamala Harris, Hillary Clinton, look like child's play.
Yeah.
She's as bad as it gets. Who do you think?
Yeah, so let's talk about Trudeau. Trudeau is, he's only the prime minister by I think he won like 34%.
Yeah, it's a parliamentary system.
Right, because there's so many people that run and then it gets diluted and he ends up becoming the prime minister and 2/3 of the country can't stand the guy.
Right.
But he's a hardcore communist. I mean, he is a Marxist, like you read about. So if you read the definition of Marxist, it's him.
Yeah.
And so he doesn't care about what people think, about how he operates, his behavior. He doesn't care. He's going to continue down that path. And frankly, the conservative movement in Canada, so people that don't know, when we talk about the flyover states in the United States of America, which are truly the flyover states from so you got Washington, D.C., New York City, and Hollywood, and everybody in between. That's the flyover. In Canada, it's the western part of Canada.
Right.
It's like Vancouver and to the west.
Yeah. Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Alberta.
So the conservative movement in Canada needs to shore themselves up and be very careful about the conservative leaders that are rising, because you got to make sure that they're not just telling you what you want to hear, right? And so here in this country, who are the dangerous people? Well, the dangerous people are still somewhat floating around Washington, D.C. Mm-hmm. Some of them are still in government. A couple of them are in the Department of Justice. One is the head of the director of the National Intelligence Office, Avril Haines. You have governors like a Whitmer. You have Newsom, obviously. You've got the governor of New York. you have, and even, the governor, I keep banging this thing.
Oh,
governor,
sorry. I can
that's right.
move it back.
That's right. That's okay. I just got to be.
What happened is when you ran in earlier.
Yeah, I know. Don't blame it on me.
No, I'm blaming it. I'm blaming it on myself. But I can move it however
the governor of Massachusetts, about probably like a year and a half ago, put out some crazy thing about how we might have to put illegals into people's homes. And everybody's like, wait a second, is this like, is this 1776 when you're going to start taking our homes to put illegals away? I was just up in Nebraska. Okay, Nebraska, beautiful state. Not, Rhode Island now, I'm from Rhode Island. Rhode Island now has a bigger population than Nebraska of legals. Illegals, I was taken to a place just outside of Omaha. So we were up in Lincoln. I showed the film up in Lincoln. Great audience. We went up to shoot some weapons up in near Omaha. 88 Tactical, it's called. 88 Tactical. I'll give them a plug.
Cool.
And we're driving by, and I'm like, man, I see all these homes being built. Okay, these are like sixplexes, right? I mean, off on the side of the highway as we're driving up into Omaha. And I'm like, wow, man, I didn't realize there was that many people moving here. The guy driving me said, that's not for U.S. citizens. No. Those are for illegals. Nebraska. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, well, Nebraska's a red state. Well, so why the hell? Because the money that flows when you take these people, and I'm looking at it's a giant number of homes, essentially, apartments.
Right.
I call them sixplexes, eightplexes. It's going to turn into a slum after a while. And it's in this really just in the outskirts of Omaha. And I'm thinking to myself, God, how do we ever get here? This is a Republican state.
Right.
Because this is where we have problems. Because when you talk about dangerous people and people that are, there are Marxists, there are communists, right? And they'll pretend that they're still Democrats. They're not. That party is gone.
Right.
So I'm a Democrat. I grew up as a Democrat. Okay, I just changed parties because I had to get a new license.
Right.
I moved to Florida. So I said, what party do you want to be? And I said, well, what do you got? And he said, well, we got Democrat, we got Republican, and we got this thing called UA, which is unaffiliated. Mm-hmm. And I said, what's the UA? Well, if you're a UA, you can only vote in general elections. I said, no, I want to be able to vote in primaries. So I said, I'll take Republican for one kind of thing today, right? So that just did that just a little while ago. So this is not about that. So that party's gone, and whether that party had any goodness to it, we can argue about that going back to Lincoln if you want. But I grew up in a family that was pro-military, pro-life. My mother was the head of the pro-life movement, the pro-family, big time. I mean, I'm one of 9 children. Yeah. And pro-small business. We really, that's what my father did when he came out of the Army. So. So it changed quite a bit, and we call ourselves Kennedy Democrats. So that party's gone. It's been taken over completely by the socialist movement of this country. And that started actually back post-World War I. There's a long history of this. I talk about Eisenhower briefly in the movie. And Eisenhower, if you look at Eisenhower, spent 8 years as president. On his cabinet, he had a lot of communists on his cabinet, guys who were secretaries of something.
Right. In
his cabinet. But Eisenhower had to be the face because he's, the warrior from the victor of World War II, at least in Europe. And so all these things matter because when we start to think about what is really going to happen. I mean, most people like you don't know what you're going to have for dinner tonight. You know what you're going to have for dinner tonight?
Yes.
What?
I'm going to have chicken tikka masala from Costco.
Seriously, from Costco.
From Costco.
Yeah.
I believe an Indian lady makes it in a factory. She's chained to
You probably got to go pay your Costco bill, So you're going to have chicken marsala because you had it before. But most people, I go to Costco because you can buy, large chunks of toilet paper.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's Well,
I should have brought some.
But your prostate's doing fine, I guess. I don't know.
So, all of this matters because, for me, and I'm one of these type of people. Okay, so. I have children, I have grandchildren. You have this great audience and you got all this stuff going on and you're right to do exactly what you're doing. I mean, this is you are serving in your way. And I think a lot of people, they always come up to me, they go, thank you for your service. My uncle served, my father served. And I say to them, well, how are you serving, right? How are you serving today? And they're like, well, and I say, well, why don't you think about it? Give it some thought. Maybe you serve your community. Maybe you go volunteer. Maybe you go do something that's a little bit extra because one of the things that I have learned from warfare is that the enemy always has a vote. And when we think about our way of life here in the United States of America, with all the freedoms that we have, well, we have enemies that are overseas, right? Or enemies that are, and actually now they're in our domestic landscape. So there's these competing ideologies like communism. I mean, hell, if we didn't beat Hitler, and then I've been called a Nazi. But the people don't understand. It's Nazi socialism.
Right. National Socialist.
National Socialist. So they very, very hard left, right? I mean, the worst, the most brutal. If we didn't beat him, we'd be all praying at the altar of Adolf Hitler. Imperialism over in Japan, right? I mean, they were trying to connect radical Islamism. I wrote a book on it called The Field of Fight: How to Win the War Against Radical Islam. I wrote it almost 9 years ago now. It's better to read it today than it was 9 years ago, because here we are again.
Yeah.
So when I look at the country, and my thing is national security, and I'm a big student of history, world history, and U.S. history, especially presidential history. But when I look at the direction, I mean, I just can't live with myself and say, yeah, this is okay the way things are going.
Right.
Right. So I'm not going to sit around, because I've been blessed to have all the things that I've had. I had a great tough upbringing, but it was it was right, and I was able to serve in our military, and I love our military. I love serving in our military. I love the men and women that I serve with, and we have a great military at the rank and file level. Our leadership in the military today, the top leadership, and I'm not talking about the civilian leadership, I'm talking about the uniforms, that they need to be like either they need to be sort of reculturalized or they need to be booted out.
Right.
Seriously.
And I'm glad to hear you say that, because we just had an undercover investigation with someone who was the head, effectively, the DEI division.
Yeah.
And with a hidden camera said, yeah, as soon as a conflict with China happens, and he said, that's what we're all concerned about. He said, we don't talk about it publicly. He said, we'll be speaking Chinese in the United States, and all this goes out the window. But right now, it's good to try and reshape the military with DEI. Admitted that there was a recruiting shortfall, admitted that they have lowered their PT requirements. And some people got mad saying, oh, well, why are you going after a brother in arms in the military? I'm going, this is a Democrat who will vote Biden, who said this will harm the military, but it's good in the name of diversity. People need to realize, just because someone is in the military, there's a very big difference between people serving their country and people pushing pens. And
so here we are in the Memorial Week. Okay, Memorial Day week. Memorial Day was originally, I think, Declaration Day was the whole reason why we have Memorial Day weekend and we celebrate this weekend is because, and the reason why it was created was because after the Civil War, they wanted to recognize all of the Union soldiers that gave their lives for this country, right? And then, out of the benevolence of the great people, the great leaders that we had, they said, well, let's recognize all who have sacrificed for this country, because obviously it wasn't just about the Civil War. It goes back to the Revolutionary War. So we recognize Memorial Day for sacrifice, the sacrifice of one's life for this country, which most people don't realize. This young man over here does. When you sign on that dotted line, you might sign up to be an infantryman or an aviator or a truck driver or a cook. But what you're actually signing up to do is to give your life for this country. Mm-hmm. Most 18-year-olds don't realize that. But once you've done that, you now might have to do that.
Right.
And that's a powerful incentive. And everybody goes, I love our military. Although in your stats that you showed in the earlier segment, I think the number for the military, the rating of credibility and integrity or whatever, reputation, it was like in the 70s.
Yeah, it was pretty high. Yeah, it was 56 for the police, and it was 70-something for the military.
That's not good.
No, it's not.
It's not good. It's not good. It should be like 100%. So why is it that we have this sentiment? And I'll tell you why. Because that number used to be very high. Post-Vietnam, we resurrected our military, and we really worked hard on this. And I know this because as a young officer and as a mid-grade officer, we started to rebuild our values and our character and all these kinds of things to basically make the American people think that, hey, our military is actually good. One of the things about the Vietnam War that most people don't know, the policy for the Vietnam War were horrible policies. And we got into Vietnam on a lie, just like we got into Iraq on a lie, based on a lie. So the administrations at the time, and particularly the Johnson administration, they were like, well, we don't want the American people to hate us.
Right.
Okay? So we're going to collude with the administration at the time, and the media, okay, at the time, which they've been working together for a long time, and the intelligence community, mainly the CIA at the time, to turn the sentiment of the American people on the baby killers.
Right.
Okay, on the military.
Right.
So when the American people turned on the Vietnam War, they didn't turn on the administration. They turned on their military, and that was it was a horrible, horrible time for people to serve in the military. So for Vietnam veterans that are living, obviously, we lost 60,000 killed in action. So this Memorial Day weekend, we should resurrect the idea of these great servants of our country that served in the Vietnam War, who came back to be spit on, and that happened not because that the American people hated them. It was because the American people were influenced to hate them.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is the type of stuff that we need to understand in this country. So, with leaders that are going into our government and into our, that you say we want them to serve. You say I want to serve our country, right? And it's like you look around and you go, well, geez, if Mike Flynn goes to serve the country, and I'm an incorruptible guy, and I know what I'm doing. I'm well prepared for damn near any of these jobs, And so I go in, and it's like, okay, we tried to corrupt him, but we couldn't. So now we can't have him in there because he knows too much.
Right.
Okay, he knows these things. And when you get around a guy like Trump, who can be, his level of uncertainty, okay, that he presented around the world is actually, to me, is a strength.
Right.
A big strength. So these are the kinds of things that they don't want. They don't want these people who they can't control.
Right. No, that's exactly right.
So,
and that happens the same way, by the way, in the media. It happens with us. I mean, that's why we're completely independent. I own 100% of this.
Yeah.
There are really only a handful of companies in the conservative movement that run everything.
Right.
And we just don't want to have to, for example, advocate for vaccines or advocate for lockdowns.
So let's talk about.
But I wanted to ask you, because I know you touched on something earlier, and I know Gerald really wants to talk about this, is where you mentioned the church. And Gerald, you had a question on this because I think it's relevant.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, we may end up talking a little bit more later on this, so I'll give you kind of the brief on this. But you said if
I'm having somebody talk behind my back.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah,
no, because I was actually subpoenaed by Fannie Willis for the Georgia grand jury, and I had her boyfriend for 4.5 hours sit behind me and told me, do not turn around, because when I ask my question, I want you to speak to the grand jury, and I feel like I'm looking at Andrew Breitbart and I'm looking at you.
No, I know, and
I kept turning around. He kept having.
It's because you don't have headphones.
I want to make sure that you're not Fannie Willis's boyfriend.
No,
that's all.
Well, he can be if you want him to
I'm sorry. I'm like, this is post-traumatic stress.
No, he can be if you want him to be. He can be whatever you like.
Fine. I actually have two questions, so I'll ask the church question first. What did you mean when you said that if the church in America doesn't figure out its role, then we are, or that it needed to, right? Or that we're going to, that's a really bad thing. What did you mean by that?
Yeah. So when we wrote a book on this, Boone Cutler and I wrote a book on this called Citizens Guide, Fifth Generation Warfare, the Role of the Church. So a couple of things. In order to be president of the United States, you have to win the Catholic vote. Mm-hmm. I'm a Catholic. You got to win the Catholic vote. And why? Because I'll sort of stay at the strategic level, because there's a whole range of issues that what is the role of the church in America as it relates to who we are as a nation, what are the principles that we were founded upon. And so I think the numbers right now, if I'm not mistaken, is like of the voting public in this country, and this would be something to, you showed all those stats. This would be actually a fascinating thing to really dig into and to show your audience. I think it's around 67% are registered as Christians, voters registered as Christians, 67%. So of that number, the largest percent inside of that are Catholic, because it's a large voting bloc.
Protestantism is very fractured.
But yeah, I mean, and then the inside the Catholic Church, it's like 50-50, Democrat and Republican. I think it's 47% vote Democrat of the Catholics that vote, right?
Yeah.
The other thing is, and I think it was 2020, but it's been this way for quite a while, for a lot of presidential elections. But in 2020, and I'm lowballing this a little bit, but there was like 30 million Christians that were registered to vote that didn't.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're either lazy, they're complacent, or they're fake. And
well, that's the thing. We did do a segment on this where we looked at those numbers, and I don't have the actual statistical results. at the ready. But when you ask a lot of those Christians, so do you believe that Jesus Christ is the way to heaven? They said, no, we believe that there are many different paths to heaven, and they call themselves Christians by default. That culls the number quite a bit, where it's a significantly smaller number of people who are actually practicing Christians.
Right.
So yeah, you'd see a different number as far as.
So here's the deal about sort of the idea of tradition and doctrine.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the doctrine is the Bible. So we all have the Bible. Now you can say this Testament, that this version or that version, right? King James, I think, right? It was one of the versions out there. So, but the doctrine that all these Christian ecumenical faiths adhere to is essentially the Bible, right? You can interpret it however you want, but it's the Bible. That's the doctrine. Where there's these different paths, where there's all these arguments. Like as a Catholic, I believe in the Virgin Mary, right? So, but a lot of these other ecumenical faiths don't. So there, you have this divergence. I mean, Lutheranism. I mean, all the different. The Methodist Church, the Episcopalians, the Presbyterians. All these different paths, and what they follow are different traditions. But the doctrine is the same. And so, I always go back to the life issue, right? The life issue, where for 40 years the Supreme Court of the United States of America, in 1973, did the vote for the Roe v. Wade, which was an unconstitutional vote, but the unconstitutional decision, we had it for 40 years. And as a Catholic, I actually, as a kid, my mother, we used to call it forced family fun. My mother dragged me and a couple of my brothers and sisters down to Washington, D.C. in 1974, and I marched in the first Right to Life March. Freezing cold day. We went in and argued with our senator and our congressman from our states and stuff like that. I'm a kid. So, but I say that because the Christian community, and I've seen this, and I've argued with priests, and I actually, in that book, Field of Fight, I talk about the Pope quite a bit in there, and how the Catholic Church uses canon law, and I equate it to how the Islamic faith uses Sharia law.
Right.
So all these things matter. But when we talk about these pathways, so as we've traveled around the country in this film tour, I go and I like to walk around the cities and towns that I'm in, and I look at the different churches, and I'm looking at, and I won't mention the specific face, but they know, for anybody that's on here, they know what I'm talking about. When you're waving the rainbow flag outside of a Christian church,
right?
Okay, and you're going, we accept everybody, we accept men having, being married to each other. We accept, and I'm one of these people, like I'm a very liberal guy, okay? I lived in the military. You came in later, but I lived in the military when we had Don't Ask, Don't Tell.
Right.
Okay, 1994 timeframe, Les Aspin, Secretary of Defense, Bill Clinton, and it was kind of forced on us, but we accepted it. Don't ask, don't tell, meet the standard, go to war, and I'll fight with you as long as you're
often there. You could usually kind of tell.
You could always tell.
Hello, Major.
So
you have pinups of Kathy Ireland. The guy has Cher. You're
but
like,
now this thing. And now back to the role of the church. So now it's like there's this forced sort of idea about things that you must accept this.
Right.
And I'm sitting there in churches because I go to a lot of different ones. I again, raised as a Catholic, grew up in I went to Catholic schools in the very early days of my life. So I know that. But I used to go, particularly in the Army, because I had troops that would go to some of these. I'd go to the Baptists. I'd go to all these different, all these sermons and stuff. And I loved them. And I'd get in there and I'd, learn about it. And I would support all these guys. And I started to really think about it a lot. And I'm thinking to myself now, as I fast forward to where we are as a nation, there's no way in the world that if you can, like I say, if you're a Catholic, you can't be a Democrat. You just can't be, because now you're free to be that. But if you're a Catholic and you believe in the precepts of Catholicism, then I have a tough time if you're now going to vote for somebody. Now I have gone after a lot of pastors in this country, and I've gone after a lot of priests who I say, well, look, you can't preach that Bible, you can't read the gospel unless you have this thing called the Constitution. So why don't you talk more about, you know about Luke, Mark, and Matthew, and you can, rhyme and verse, and all these guys that are, they always like showcase how smart they are about the Bible. Right? But that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you don't have this thing called the Constitution, which is at risk.
Right.
Okay? And it's at risk because there are people in our government right now that want to get rid of the Constitution. They want to change it completely.
Of course.
Actually, they want to get rid of it. So what we have to do in the church is the church has to stand up really strong. Lyndon B. Baines Johnson created the Johnson Amendment because he wanted to basically hold his minister who he didn't like.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, when he was running for Congress, the minister basically said, this guy's a bad guy, right? Essentially.
Right.
So Johnson then becomes congressman, becomes senator, becomes vice president, becomes president, in a really kind of funny way. So he's the president, and what he does, what's he do? He wants to go after that minister.
Yeah.
Okay, and he creates something called the Johnson Amendment, which now shuts the voices down of all these people. Priests, ministers, pastors, whoever, right? Rabbis, all of them, because they're all afraid. Because if they say something out of school, then they lose their 501c3 rating.
Yep.
Okay, money.
Yeah.
Okay, and money, like they say, right, is the root of all evil. So the role of the church right now, the role of the church in this country is if the leadership is not going to be standing up at the pulpit, okay, because the church is not the people that I'm talking about right now. It's not the priest or the minister or the pastor or the rabbi. The church is really all these people.
Yeah.
It's the congregation. It's the greater congregation, right? Whatever the other word is, another word, the ecclesia. Right. Ecclesia. It's all these people that are out there. And if those people don't realize that what is at risk, then I've been on 6 continents. I have fought the worst possible human beings in the world. I have experienced things that no human being should experience, and I don't want that to happen here in this country. But
you fought Rosie O'Donnell?
Huh?
You fought Rosie O'Donnell?
I like her. I like Rosie.
No. Disagree.
We don't want to fight over that.
We don't want to fight over that. You said the worst people in the world.
I like her comedy. I like Roseanne better.
Yes, Roseanne. Roseanne, I'm a fan.
Roseanne's my girlfriend.
Yeah.
But anyway, so the seriousness of it is that the role of the church it has to play a greater role in the political life of this country.
Yeah, I think they can't for a few reasons. Unfortunately, for example, like you say, if they vote Democrat, I'm saying, well, okay, tell that to the Pope. We have a problem there as it relates to the Catholic Church.
Right. He's a dark Pope.
Yeah, and I'm glad to hear you say that because sometimes if
he's a dark Pope. There's only 2 popes in the history since back to St. Peter, right? Mm-hmm. Back to Peter, who was the first Pope. There's only 2 that have taken over that role in the history of the papacy, and he's one of them. The other guy was for totally different reasons. This guy was placed in there because he is a dark pope, and he is for everything that is he's for everything that is wrong with society.
Well, it's got to be hard, though, to be a Catholic, or for a lot of Catholics, I think it's changing now, to stand up and say, well, hold on, this is not what we believe, when they feel like they're basically opposing, the authority of their United Church, of the Pope. But I will tell you, with Protestants, being a Protestant myself, it's very fractured, but a lot of it is, Mark Driscoll was on here one time, he described it as state differences versus national differences. Like, you may have a different opinion on predestination, but once you say we don't believe in hell, that's a national border. You're no longer a Christian. But I will say this. You have a lot of people, they tried to, in the name of tolerance, because their numbers were shrinking, they decided, let's get away from the hot button issues. And they equated that with fire and brimstone because we want to be more inclusive. Another thing is, a lot of people think that the church is run by men because most of the pastors are men. But if you look at the board of elders, it's women who often bring their children to church, Sunday schools. And so they've had to cater to women who often say, well, we want you to be nice. This makes us uncomfortable. And in trying to be more agreeable, they've watered themselves down, and they're not. And you know what? What you're seeing with the church in the United States is what you see in Europe. Where you can't basically remove Christianity, which they have done really in modern Europe, without filling that void with something. It can't be filled with agnosticism. It's been filled with Islam in a lot of ways. It's been filled with other radical ideologies.
Look at the latest election in the United Kingdom.
Right.
I mean, like you got 10 cities now that now have mayors who are Muslim. The number one, name for a children being born, I think 3 years running, is Muhammad.
Right. And if you're not, you cannot fill the void of strong fundamental Christianity with just sort of agape love, feel good prosperity gospel. So it's being filled with the religion of secularism. And Christians need to be stronger, not nicer and more tolerant, because people don't respect it.
I think in this country, and frankly, but worldwide to a degree, but certainly in this country. And again, I kind of you laid out some really interesting statistics in the earlier part of this for those that were paying attention. The number one, women are emerging as leaders, partly because I think we're more than 50% of our population is women now.
Yeah.
And so, and the breakdown of the family, which is a religious, it is a religious issue, the breakdown of the family, but it's not done because guys and men and women don't like each other. It was done intentionally.
Right.
The assault on the family was done intentionally. So women now are, I think women understand far more than men. I'd love to see more men involved in things that matter in communities. Women are getting more involved, like school boards. You see all these women getting involved in school boards around the country because women are generally raising their children themselves. Mm-hmm. A lot of broken families. So they're raising their children themselves. They are running, at least one job, if not two. They're trying to get the kids off to school, go to jobs, and do everything. Whereas before there was always this very natural sort of family, and guys were going to go off to work, and all the different things that we've sort of reshaped our entire ideology about how we look at men and women these days.
Yeah.
Which we can sit here and debate that all day long, but I do think that women, and this is what actually gives me a lot of hope in this country. I think that women are stronger, just intellectually, mentally, emotionally than they once were. And if not, they always were, but they are definitely stronger, and they're showing a stronger presence in this country than we've ever seen. I think that women are not going to be fooled by all this nonsense that they put out, that they spew out in the media about, Orange Man bad. I mean, women are looking and they're saying, this is not good for my family. This is not good for my children. And I'm not going to put up with it. So what do I do? And the number of women's organizations that are fighting for this country, Moms for America, Women Fighting for America. There's these groups that have bubbled up over the last few years that have millions of followers now that are part of it, and they're formed all across this country. I don't know of an organization called, Dads Fighting for America. I know of an organization called Moms Fighting for America. Moms for America. I know those. I don't see Dads for America.
Well, I would say, not to argue with it, but that's because if you look at most of the politically active groups, they're largely made up of men. And I will say this, yes, I think that women have probably a greater aptitude or willingness to serve their communities. The thing that is lacking, and the only reason this country has voted Democrats in for the last 40 years is because of white women. Largely, as far as it's the only large enough voting base, is, they're willing to serve, but women in general are not as capable at identifying active threats. And so I know you're saying they're coming around, but for every Moms for America, there is a much larger feminist group, Pussyhead Economics, right? The Women's March. Yeah. So they're just as active. Unfortunately, they don't have, still to this day, there's one group. There's one group in the country, only one, that supports biological men in women's sports. White men don't, black men don't, Hispanic men don't, Hispanic women don't, black women don't. It's exclusively white women who support biological men in women's sports. So that's because they want to be nice, but they don't identify the threat that is a biological man in a girl's locker room. And that's what I hope we see change, because they can serve their community incredibly well, but you've got to identify the threats. Yeah. And I think that we're seeing that change a little bit.
Yeah, I actually think that we're going to see that change even more. The more we start to see this forced acceptance of the behavior that comes from that, the consequence of these actions, right? And I hate sitting here, two guys talking about women, but
well, that's what feminists want you to think.
Yeah,
it's fine. They'll say no vagina, no opinion. It's like, now men can get pregnant too, so shut up.
Right. So I do think that this matters for this country, because this is an element of our country that I'm inspired, and I've been around the country now, the whole country, probably 3 times in the last 4 years on these different tours. This one with this film. The other one, we do a Reawaken America tour. Another one, I do a counter child trafficking effort. And I go into small towns, big places, and mostly small towns. I like to go into these places where nobody ever shows up. You know, Bo, Washington, right? I mean, Wichita, Kansas. You go into these places, and you meet people, and you're like, wow, it's inspiring because, again, back to women. A lot of women show up to these things, and I'm like, okay, what are you doing? And they're telling me what they're doing in their communities. And and I would have, there's some guys, but it's not. The guys are, they come in and they kind of sniff around. And they're looking to, maybe it's somebody that's political that wants to get another vote or wants to see how many people are going to show up, or maybe I can get an endorsement or something like that. I just find the sentiment of this country right now is like enough is enough.
Yeah.
And that sentiment is very powerful. And now, so if enough is enough, then what do you do about it, right? What steps do you take to basically get this country back? Because we are not fixable in 4 years.
No, of course not.
We're not fixable in 4 years. This is going to take a while. And I'm one of these guys that's like, there's no going back. It's not like, oh, we need to go back to the good old days. No, there's no going back. We must move forward. But when we move forward with these sort of right and left limits called the United States Constitution, where there is equal justice for all. Not, we're gonna screw these guys because they are in the Trump camp, and we got to get rid of them all because we can't have these people, running our government. We're going to run it. We've decided how our government's going to run. We can't have that, right? I mean, things like that. We have to overcome that. We've got to overcome that. If we don't overcome that, then our nation as a I want you to be able to continue to do what you're doing. We can joke about it all day long here, but at a certain point in time, all of the voices that matter to truth, right? They will be shut down.
Well, we were shut down. I mean, for example, they created a new rule. This is something that we have struggled with. On YouTube, we didn't violate any policies. Right. There was a hit piece put together of a reel of any offensive joke that I had told. They wanted me to be removed. YouTube created a new rule so they could demonetize the channel. Now, just imagine if 60% of your business revenue is gone, even though you didn't violate. They created new rules.
Right.
And that's why we have Mug Club and subscribers, and we've actually had to migrate people to Rumble. Now, the issue is not that you're demonetized, because we're willing to take that haircut. Yeah. The issue is once you're demonetized on YouTube, and it's a business, they direct people to monetize content. So we lost about 90% of our reach on YouTube, Facebook, and we've migrated people off of these social media ghettos. It's a slog. We had to take a numbers dip for a while, but a lot of people have left.
For Rumble, I mean, you have a giant. I hope they're all subscribers. If they're not, they need to subscribe on Rumble.
Yeah.
You're like, I don't know, 1 million, 2 or something like that. Maybe that's followers, but in order for people, this is where it's like.
I think what are we, 1.7?
It's well over 1.5 now.
That are they subscribers?
Subscribed.
Yeah,
on
that's
Rumble.
awesome. See, that's awesome.
Which is way more valuable to me than the 7 million we have on YouTube, because they're more active. We can reach them.
Well,
we're not censored.
Plus, you got to have the resources to be able to fight.
Right.
So you can't, I can go out there on a street corner with a placard on or writing something across my forehead.
I've done that.
Right?
Many times. That was the first change of mind. I had a sandwich board because I couldn't get a permit.
Right, there you go.
I couldn't run when they tried to kill me.
In order for us to fight this fight, and because this is a fight. Life is a sacrifice. Warfare is not fair. So, I had a conversation last night about, we kill citizens. Hey, we firebombed Dresden. We dropped 2 atom bombs on Japan. Not because we wanted to kill civilians, but because we wanted to destroy the will of those empires, right? So now people have to understand, if somebody's out there, one of your viewers or somebody that's a viewer, a subscriber on Rumble, and they have challenges with their friends, and they go, I subscribe to this guy because he's great. He's always got these great guests, or he's got a great message. We need, in order for you to be able to continue to do that, you got to have the resources, all of us. I wish that we could unify our efforts with some of these places, but as you know, and I think you've dealt with this in some of those we think are conservatives, right? I think it's a lot of bullshit. but
Yes.
but and you know what I'm talking about. So
exactly.
But when we talk about resources and somebody paying $10 a month, I mean, don't go to, can I say Starbucks on this?
Yeah, I don't care what it says.
So don't go to Starbucks. The Starbucks coffee sucks anyways.
It's terrible. If anything, Dunkin', the reason I like Dunkin' is because the CEO said we will never be political.
Dunkin' Donuts?
He said we will never be political. My favorite. He said they give a lot to, feeding like hungry kids. Yeah. Said it's just not what we do, which is surprising for a company out of Boston.
I've eaten a lot of glazed donuts.
Have you? I mean, the coffee's good. They're nice coffee.
But so people that are out there that don't know what to do, you kind of sit there and you go, geez, I'm hearing all this stuff. I don't know what to do. And send $10 a month.
Thanks.
I'm serious. I mean, because I live that.
Go get the movie. Go get the film.
But I live that. I live that. But when I was persecuted by the government.
Yep.
And now I got to reach out. And my wife talks about this in the movie. People will be introduced to half of my family in this movie. And my wife she plays a very powerful role in this. And we've been together since we were 13 years old. So this is one of these.
You were both 13 though, right?
But what it is we were asking people. Yeah. we were asking people. You're a smart ass. We're asking people to give us money.
True.
And I pled guilty, right? And I describe why I pled guilty in the movie. But so we're asking people to give us money, and the American people, they like the good God-given common sense that they have, they realize that something wasn't right, and the American people. They decided, okay, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to help this guy, and I'm going to help his family, and they did. And they came out in droves.
Can you explain to people who don't know why you pled guilty? And like I said, go grab the movie no matter what, because I even if you're spoiling stuff in the film, they will go and watch it.
Yeah, it solely had to do with my family.
Right.
It came down to my family, and a subtext or a subcomponent of it is just how corrupt the judicial system, and that includes every piece of it in Washington D.C. It's just so corrupt. But that's really a subtext to why, for me, I pled because of my family. It had to do with my family, and that's an intimate component in the film that we talk about, and particularly having to do with my son. And because when they find somebody who they can't get, I mean, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I'm a choir boy or an Eagle Scout, but in the exposure of their misconduct, what we learned, those that paid real close attention learned was that they couldn't find anything, not even an unpaid parking ticket.
Right.
Okay. In a life of service and a life of everything that I did, I'm not this, I'm not an angel, but I'm one of these people that I do what is right. I try to do what's right. I was raised to be a good person. I served in the military because I thought that was noble. It was a noble cause. I believed what my father taught me, and I tried to be good to others. Right, the golden rule. So, and they had to do everything that they could, and they did.
Yep.
And these people, and one of the things that I warned Trump about the night I left, I warned him about one specific person, and that was Andrew McCabe. Andrew McCabe, right? Andrew McCabe at the time was the deputy director of the FBI, and he ended up becoming the acting director for a period, but after Trump got rid of Comey. And like I say, Trump didn't know any of these people. He didn't know any of these people. He came into Washington. He's been in Washington, D.C. like 8 times, and most of it was to check on the
I talk about it every day. It's hard for me to keep him straight.
He's coming there to check on Trump Hotel. He didn't go into. He didn't know about the political. These people that are there that are government bureaucrats, and they're in there like ticks, man, and they are just sucking the life out of our country, and. There's evil. I mean, I do believe in evil. I do believe that there's an evil. I have faced it. I have seen it, and I have fought it. And I've tried to destroy enough of it on this planet in my military days but there's just so much of it. And right now it exists in the United States of America in the bureaucracy of this country. And it's not just the bureaucracy and there are specific people that are running these organizations. And if you're the president or I'm the president or you're the secretary, whatever, you just come in and you serve for a period of time, and these ticks that are in there embedded, they sit there and they go, oh, we know what to do with this guy.
Yep.
And they'll do it. And so what you've got to know, so when they say Flynn knows where the bodies are buried, it's a guy that can come in and say, okay, this is what you've got to eliminate, okay? And if you eliminate this, everybody's going to shit their pants, the media is going to go crazy, and they're going to call you all kinds of names, so you better be prepared. In 2016, we weren't prepared.
Right.
We were not prepared. And a guy like me who had some idea about what I was going to do to fix the national security system, which is not just, stuff in the White House. It's a system.
Of course.
So they had to get rid of me right away.
And you pled guilty for your family, and of course you were pardoned. I pled guilty once.
Yeah.
I pled guilty once. I didn't know I didn't know the system. What happened is I got a speeding ticket in a speeding trap, and I wasn't even in my car. I was in my girlfriend's car at the time. I was out of state, and I put it in the glove compartment, and they posted it was a state where I didn't live in, put in a car that I didn't drive, and they posted it to an address that I'd never been. So I forgot about it. And then I was back in Michigan a couple years later driving. They said, oh, you have a suspended license. I said, what? They said, you have this unpaid ticket. I'm like, I didn't even know about this ticket because it was a whole system. Anyways, I go before the judge. The judge goes, how do you plead? I said, guilty, Your Honor. She goes, really? I said, yes, but I would like to explain. This was actually a ticket given to me in a state where I didn't live, a car that wasn't mine, and I've never seen this address before in my life. And the judge goes, so you mean to say not guilty? I said, well, I did it. I was going 5 over, but I would like to. She says, you mean to say not guilty? No, I did it. I did do the thing, but I just don't think that this is commensurate. She goes, I'm going to write down not guilty. And she wiped it off because I was like, I'm not going to say I didn't speed. I was going, 5 or 6 over.
Yeah.
So I learned my lesson, just lie.
Yeah. No, that's probably not a great idea to just lie. And by the way, we do have some chat.
Yes.
Yeah, sorry.
So it's probably a good time.
I want to ask him one more question before chat. One question. So are you planning on, or are you willing to serve in the cabinet again?
So I would answer it like this, because I don't know. I've been through the process about being asked by a guy who became president. And my life is a life of service. I do believe that I would say yes to that, whatever that question is, in whatever capacity. But I would have a different set of conditions.
Mm-hmm.
So people would go, well, the President of the United States is asking you, how can you say no to that? I can.
Yes.
I can. And I would have a different set of conditions. And those conditions would be based on an ability to be able to make decisions that must be made, not like nice to be made or I got to go back for permission.
Right.
So there's authorities that come with responsibility. And so the short answer is yes. The longer answer is there would need to be a different conversation this time instead of the last time.
Would one of those conditions be to put Garland in stocks or throw tomatoes at Christopher Wray?
I mean, it's surreal that having this guy as the Attorney General. The Attorney General.
I'll take it as a maybe.
I mean, I don't know if we have stocks available. Do we have any stocks?
I'm sure we could. I'm sure we could make some up. Right? It's really just something that closes. You put in 2 hands and a head, and no one gets hurt. You feel shame. Let's grab some. Grab some chat because people are lighting up the lines.
We'll do 2 here really quickly.
All right.
And I'll mention one, but you answered it. But I thought it was a good question. So from Cobalt Smith, what do you expect the military to look like if Trump is reelected?
I expect the military to be to basically focus on winning.
Mm-hmm.
That's what the military must focus on. We have standards. Those standards have got to be adhered to. I think that there's going to have to be a raising of standards.
Mm-hmm.
There's going to have to be a complete cleansing of this bullshit critical race theory. And this social emotional learning. You talked briefly about this, a little bit back.
Yeah.
There's no safe spaces on a U.S. naval warship.
No.
There's no safe spaces on a battlefield. If you feel sorry for yourself, you can't get up and walk off the battlefield when somebody's trying to kill you. So we have to have a level of training and readiness and preparedness. And that doesn't, people are going to go, well, he's all for the military-industrial complex. He wants to throw more money at it. No. In fact, I would actually say, I don't want another dime. What I want is a level of standard that I expect, and that standard is, the number one standard is going to be that we are going to win.
Right.
We're not going to participate in these endless wars and have these forever wars. I mean, we've been in war my entire life. My entire life, our nation has been at war. And I have written about peace is the aberration in human history, war is the norm. But that doesn't have to be the case. Under Trump was the first president in my lifetime that didn't go to a new war, although we were at war while he was in it, in Afghanistan and Iraq and elsewhere. Actually, Ukraine. Under Obama, February of 2014 is when the Russians first attacked Ukraine. So war is this endless condition, and that has to end. That's where the United States of America has to say enough is enough. And so winning is a big deal. Nobody in this room, nobody that's watching can tell me what the objectives are for why we are in Ukraine, because there's never been stated. And I pay very close attention to this. Nobody can tell me what the objectives were for why we were in Afghanistan or why we were in Iraq. Iraq was based on a lie. We went to Iraq, a sovereign nation, don't like Saddam, was all for it when he died, when he was hung, but it was a sovereign nation. There was no reason for us to go to Iraq other than to be vindictive for Bush and his father and his family. And here we are in Texas, right? So I mean, it was based on a lie. Weapons of mass destruction. Remember that? Colin Powell.
Well, there were weapons of mass, just not nuclear weapons.
No. Weapons of mass destruction in the category that we were told we were lied to. So we were lied to. And I'm jumping on you, and I don't mean to.
No, it's fine.
But it's this idea of we sat there and we told the world there's weapons of mass destruction, meaning some type of nuclear capability or chemical. There's weapons of mass destruction. We briefed that to the world at the United Nations. Colin Powell did it, and he lied. And so we went to Iraq. We're still in Iraq. We actually are still there. We lost that too. It's not going to be as ugly as we saw coming out of Afghanistan, where we retreated. But this Memorial Day weekend, when people are cherishing those souls who gave their lives for this country, there's many who gave their lives for this country in Iraq, and sadly, like Vietnam, based on a lie.
Yeah.
And we can't have that. We have to. So back to the great question, which it is a great question because it's a smart question. We've got to have a military that focuses on winning, and that means training, competing, and winning.
Yeah.
Not participating in everybody gets a trophy.
Right.
You don't.
It's really about what the military needs right now is to be effective, and they need to be more efficient. That's what it is. You don't need giant no-bid contracts.
Big time.
We could shore that up with some efficiency when you look at the waste in the military. And by the way, I don't think it's unpatriotic to say we need to treat the military like we treat other bureaucracies, because there is that problem. It's a legitimate role of government, but there's a lot of fat there from people in offices with.
We have at the end of World War II, which we had like the largest military ever. At the end of World War II, we had like 7 4-stars.
Right.
Okay, 4 stars. When you think about generals and admirals, 4 stars, right? 7. And today we have I think it's 45.
Wow.
And we have a really tiny military. So it's like we've taken this pyramid. I don't know if they can see that, but we've taken this pyramid where a few muckety mucks at the top, and we got our foxhole strength at the bottom is like filled, right? Maybe overfilled. What we've done is we've whoosh, and now our foxhole strength, when we commit a rifle company to war, or we commit a rifle battalion to war, or a Marine, an aviation squadron, right? When we commit them, we're sending them undermanned.
Right.
Undermanned. And yet, I call them, all the jugglers that travel around with generals, right? You got jugglers that go with them sometimes. You ever seen? You probably haven't. Maybe you did.
Actual jugglers?
Were you a juggler?
No.
No, you were a rifleman.
Yeah, I was an infantryman. Yeah.
But I joke about it because as a retired general officer, and I used to get really upset at the generals that would come. The general's coming by for an inspection, and he'd have an entourage of 15 or 20 people, and you're going, Jesus, and I'm short a first sergeant, or I'm short a couple platoon sergeants, right?
Right.
And I'm looking, and he's coming in, and he wants to check the pillows. And I'm like, Jesus, don't you have better things to do?
Well, if you sleep on a bad pillow, your neck will be bothered all week.
For a week, yeah.
I mean, but I'm giving you. So I'm sorry, I'm way off the question.
No. I think you answered the question. Let's grab one more.
We'll do the final question here,
all right.
and we'll kind of wrap.
Final question, by the way, it is Flynn. I want to make sure. Where am I holding? Yeah.
Yep.
Flynn, deliver the truth, whatever the cost. There you go. I was hoping you'd bring it up as an overlay. Right.
Streaming on Amazon.
Streaming on Amazon, and you said YouTube as well.
YouTube and streaming on YouTube. You can get it.
Right.
It's got a couple. You can go to flynnmovie.com.
Show the man your support and love. He's done a lot for this country, and he still is today. He even subjected himself to this show, so that's quite a feat. All right, final question there.
Okay, so
I'm the Q in LGBTQ because I questioned why I came on the show.
Also, by the way, when you just said this pyramid, you did that. You were going to get people saying that you were in the Illuminati.
Exactly.
Oh
my God, you're right. I don't think that way.
Right. So this is well, you know what? I'll do two things here. So you mentioned how people can support, and supporting shows like this is definitely one of the ways. Supporting people that you believe in that are in the fight. That was Stealth Clubber's question. So that was the answer to that. So thank you very much. We agree. That is the way that you can help support and actually serve and fight in this battle. But this is
Get to the question, Gerald.
Cheat and deaf. I said I was getting to both. Okay. Did the general, meaning obviously you, this is how it was written, did the general see the 2000s military laying the groundwork for wokeism?
The general see.
Was it apparent to you when you were still active serving that they were kind of laying the groundwork for this DEI, for the woke kind of policies
that we see in the military now?
I will say that I thought that the way the Bush administration handled the wars, particularly under Rumsfeld, they and again, there's things that I talk about in this film that, because I want people to understand the foundation of what we are facing. So the Bush, Cheney, Rumsfeld administration, right? They ran these wars like you would running the military-industrial complex. Just keep pouring the money into it, and don't worry about what we don't care what you think, Flynn. Okay, because we did tell them what we thought,
right?
Very bluntly, but we don't really care what you think, Flynn and others. You're gonna pat you on your little head. Right. And you just keep going about fighting this war. Wokeism, I look at wokeism as this shift in acceptable behavior, like social behavior, right? I think that's more, when I think about wokeism in the military, this shift in this social experiment of everything from transgenderism, all this sort of stuff, the kinds of things that we do in our military today. I just mentioned, they got safe spaces at the U.S. Naval Academy because they're going to have safe spaces, on a naval vessel. Give me a break. So wokeism to me, wokeism today is about
rampant sodomy.
Yeah, wokeism to me is about diminishing the role and the responsibility, and frankly, the reputation of our military, because the military is the last bastion of integrity in this country. When you show that statistic, at 75% of how people
positive view of the
military, that to me is not good. It's not good. It should be like 95% or 100%, because our military is supposed to be this organization, this institution that takes care of the safety and security of our country, and they do it blindly. We do it in places that we don't want to be. We do it for people who don't give a shit if we're there or not, and we do it. That's the beauty. That's the strength of being of these soldiers, these men and women, these young men and women primarily, who die for this country, who do all those things. They go to these places where nobody gives a shit if they're there or not, but they go there because they're told to go there. So our men and women in the military, and those that have sacrificed, why we support this Memorial Day weekend, and we should be doing it all the time. That number to me should be like in the 90s, the high 90s. So that hurts me, because that's what wokeism has done. Wokeism has caused a component of our country to look at our military and go, ooh, I don't know, man. I don't know if I can trust our military anymore. They got these weird things going on. Hey, moms and dads come up to me all the time. One of the other indicators that I look for are people that are like sergeants that have spent 6 to 10 years. They may be re-enlisted one time, because they said, I like the unit that I'm in. I like the guys that I'm working with, so I'll re-enlist. But then all of a sudden now what we're starting to see, like 10-year sergeants that are saying, I can't take this anymore.
Yeah, that was
what I'm telling them.
At 8.5 years in 2016, that's when I left as a staff sergeant.
Yeah.
I see everybody around me.
Right.
Well, I'm done with this. I'm not going to be doing this anymore. And then you lose that core leadership.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And to me, that's what wokeism is impacting, is this love of country, love of service, love of, you don't serve. We don't go overseas and fight our enemies because we hate them. We go overseas and fight our enemies because we love something. I love the guy next to me. I love my family. I love my community, right? I love my country. That's why we fight. That's why American soldiers fight. Not because we hate. I don't hate people. I don't hate anybody. But if I'm going to serve my country, and so that's what I want people to understand about our military. That's why that number, that actually, I take that as a negative.
Of course.
And to me, so now that's why, back to the wokeism and the previous question, we have got to be a winning force. We have got to be, and I say, war is not fair. It's not meant to be. It's meant to be it's meant to be fought and won and over with. And then what you do as an American, what you do is you say to that enemy that you just fought, you say, like we did with all of Europe, we did with, hell, we still support the dang Taliban. I mean, we did with Japan, right? After World War II, and then other nations. We are such a benevolent, giving country. What we do is if we kick somebody's ass and we beat them badly, which we did. Last war that we won was World War II. When we win, we then go back and we say, how can we help? Mm-hmm. Right? Now we want to help you build yourselves back up, but you're not going to do it as these crazy Nazis or these crazy imperialists, right? And that's the beauty of our country. That's the beauty of our military. And our military has that. I saw on the battlefield a soldier killing his enemy. I mean, just in a massive firefight, and then in a split second, save a child who was in harm's way. And what possesses somebody? How do you train that? You don't train that in other societies. I can tell you that. Mm-hmm. That comes from something that's innate to every single American, and especially soldiers who understand service. But I think it's innate in every American, where we look at life and we say, that's precious, and I grab it, and I'm going to turn my back on bullets that are being fired at me to protect this baby that I don't even know whose it is.
Right.
It's in harm's way. That's what an American soldier is capable of doing, and that's what we have been doing. That's why 75% in that, I'm like, wow, man, that's not good. That, I think, is an effect of wokeism. So back to that question.
Yeah, well, I think it comes down to rebuilding trust. You have a lot of people, because you're talking about people who are conservatives, who would be the type of people, or patriotic Americans who would want to serve their country. They lack trust in the leadership of, they view it kind of as all one and the same, military, intelligence agencies. I mean, we used to think that the FBI were the good guys, yep. And that's something it needs to be changed from the top down, so that the people who want to serve, the future Flynns of the world, actually are incentivized to do so. Well, we appreciate you taking the time. Again, the film is Flynn, Deliver the Truth, whatever the this is Flynn, Deliver the Truth, whatever the cost. I wanted to also go, which one of these books, because I can't sell everything. Which book should they start with?
That first one right here, Session 1.
Citizen's
Guide to Fifth Generation Warfare.
Okay.
Introduction to 5GW, which is what we're involved in. So the war, we are in a war right now in the world, and definitely in this country. And the introduction, if you read the introduction to Fifth Generation, it's a bestseller too, which is a self-published book by Boone and I.
Well, I can't read the introduction right now.
No. I'm saying it because we're censored. I can't get a book published by one of these big publishing companies, right?
Right.
So we did it ourselves, and the American people have responded. That's why it's important. Now, the more people understand fifth generation warfare, the more they'll understand the challenges that we are facing, because this is not neighbor against neighbor or family member against family member. This is really these institutions that are fighting our ideology of freedom.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's very important. But that's probably the best one. The movie is a powerful movie. And the last thing I'd say about the movie is what we tried to do is weave the story through the persecution that my family and I went through, and put it into those that watch it to say, oh my God, I've been through this same thing, and it's happening now. and it's the same people that are doing it. And so hopefully it encourages, and there's an encouraging component to it, a very encouraging component to it, where you will walk away and say, I have to do more. I got to do more for my family. I got to do more for my community. I got to do more for my country.
It's what are you willing to fight for? And that's why we talk about it here at Mug Club, Fight Like Hell. And I'm really glad to know that this is fifth generation. I thought it was a book about 5G, and I have a hotspot in my house. It's like, oh, no, it really does give you cancer. I'm a child. General Flynn, of course, is not. Thank you for being here, sir. We'll see you tomorrow.